Do you feel overwhelmed? Or do you feel like you're running in the same place like a hamster on a wheel? What if you could visualize yourself efficiently doing business, or visualize a future self winning a marathon? How would your mindset or future self-image affect your performance? Let's ask a successful mindset coach, Stephanie Hessler. Welcome to the Excellent Executive Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Katrina Berus, and today we have a special friend, and that is Stephanie Hessler. Yes, Stephanie, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Katrina.
So, Stephanie, you're a mindset and performance coach. Could you give us some examples of how your self-image influences your behavior?
Absolutely. Yes. So self-image is a picture, a mental blueprint that we all have, each one of us, deep down in our subconscious mind. And self-image was put there mostly from our experiences going back to early childhood, but throughout our lives as well. And as we progress with our lives, this inner blueprint, so to speak, literally controls us, controls our results. It dictates how we show up in life and what it is that we attract to ourselves. So, for example, in my case, when I started to really learn about self-image, I wrote the script of the future me, and I continue to work with the script of the future me, and I read this script every day. And so, for example, my vision for my business is to create a world-class boutique coaching and consulting company that helps high-achieving individuals to really step into their exceptional selves. And I have quite a bit of detail around this vision. So every single day, I am stepping into this woman. I'm showing up more and more empowered. And when I think back how impactful, Katrina, self-image has been in my own life. 8 years ago, when I started my coaching business, I had 0 clients. And since then, I have had the opportunity to coach hundreds of high-achieving individuals. I've seen some amazing transformations, largely because of individuals up-leveling their self-images. But again, using myself as an example, living from an up-leveled self-image, which has brought me to where I am today.
So give us an example of a client of yours, for example, that comes to you with a low self-image and how you help her or him to change that.
Yes, so great question. So, for example, I have a client who's a Fortune 100 executive, and he had been passed over for a promotion. And so as we started working closely together, and he really came to understand the self-image work, we realized that part of the reason he wasn't getting promoted was because of his own limiting beliefs about himself, as well as the way that others were perceiving him. Often it's easy, even for a high-achieving individual, to blame outside people, outside circumstances. And of course, that can certainly play a part. But how we think about ourselves also impacts others. So as he started to doing the self-image work, which included writing his self-image script, and he started to step into himself as a future leader and becoming that person, almost like a great actor studies a part, researches a part, memorizes the part, and steps into character. So did this individual. And just in the last month, he received a new advanced position. And what he said to me was, Stephanie, it is astounding how powerful this self-image work is, not only for myself internally, but how it impacts others' perceptions of me.
So you basically play the part, act the part, and then it projects something that where other people believe you're playing.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I see. So tell us a little bit about your corporate life and why you left it. Was there a different perception that you had or transition that you had that helped you start your own business?
Yeah. So I'd like to start maybe to answer that question with sharing one of my very favorite quotes, which is from Steve Jobs. And he says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back." And if I think about the decision for me to become a coach, it was not a straight path from the corporate route. And I did rely a lot on my intuition and trust. And I did learn about self-image on that journey. And I'll explain to you how that impacted my decision. But I'd like to tell you a little bit more about my journey. And like you, Katrina, I grew up internationally. My father was an executive with an international company, and my parents had dreams for all four of my brothers and sister and me to be educated in the United States. So I came to college in the States, graduated, went to work on Wall Street, got my MBA at Wharton. And, by the time I was in my mid 30s, by most sort of outside definition, so to speak, I would have been considered very successful. I was a vice president. I was earning six figures, had a family, beautiful home, nice bank account. But here's the bottom line. Inside of myself, I didn't feel successful. And back then, I didn't know anything about self-image. And in 1999, my then husband and I were divorced. And what happened after that, I never in my wildest dreams would have anticipated. We ended up in the family court and the custody system for 5-6 years, and our children were separated. Our older son went to live with my ex-husband in Cleveland, and our younger son lived with me in Boston. And this experience really brought me down on my knees. I was thinking to myself at the time, I went to the best schools. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. But what this did, and in retrospect, I can see what an important part of my journey, getting me to where I am now as a coach, this was, because it made me have a really good hard look at myself. And I started studying personal growth and world religions and spirituality. And unknowingly, these were the early seeds, right? Unknowingly, I was starting to create those dots that led me to coaching. And in 2013, I had left the corporate world and had started a business. And it was much more difficult than I ever imagined. So I hired a coach. And this was the first time that I learned about self-image. And that was when I started to write the script of the future me. And I stepped into her. And people started noticing. People started coming to me. And in 2014 is when I actually launched my coaching business. And since then, I have had the wonderful opportunity to work with hundreds of high-achieving individuals. And as I mentioned, I've seen amazing transformation in many of my clients and continue to grow myself as a result of this self-image work.
Yes, isn't it wonderful how you do transform by also helping your clients? So that's
absolutely.
So in your experience in the corporate life and as a coach, what would you say, according to you, are the biggest mistakes that corporate leaders and business owners are making?
Yeah, so that's a really great question that you asked me, while I was in the corporate world, but then also as a coach. And I have to say that I prefer to answer that question, if it's okay, from the perspective of a coach, because I just didn't have that deep enough awareness at the time that I was in the corporate world. And what I'm able to see now, and of course, this is a result of hundreds and hundreds of conversations over the last 8 years, is that, that impulse to grow, to be better, to have more, to achieve more, is a fundamental impulse for all people, right? Everyone wants to be doing better and wanting to advance career and life, specifically in the work that I do with corporate leaders and business owners. But the common mistakes that I see is, I would say 3 in particular. Number 1, playing too small. So somebody has incredible talent, reservoirs of talent and potential, went to great schools, but playing too small. Number 2, is not working in alignment or living in alignment with what they really, really want, often living somebody else's dream. And then number 3, and this is so common, is that tendency to blame leadership or the economy or pandemic, whatever it might be, that tendency to blame other people or situations outside of themselves, when the truth is our success always starts inside of ourselves. So I would say those are the three common mistakes, and it's because of a lack of awareness.
Okay, so you work on their awareness to
Yes.
start with, and you help them to play bigger, to take the risk. You help them to align their behavior and according to their goals and what they want long-term in the future, and then to not take responsibility, basically, not blaming others.
Yes.
So how do you help them advance their careers more rapidly? So you mentioned that you have them project their future self and to walk in that role.
Yes.
What else?
Well, the most foundational, even before, doing that self-image work, there's a really preliminary step, which is becoming aware of your dominant thinking. Because success starts in your mind. And whatever a person's dominant thoughts and beliefs are actually creates their results and their reality. You cannot be one kind of person with a particular kind of thinking and have a different kind of environment. And often, even for people who went to top schools or really well-educated, high-achieving individuals who have already achieved a high level of success. If, say, somebody was passed over for a promotion or maybe isn't feeling valued or validated or respected at the level that they feel they deserve, what happens is that when those doubts and disappointments start to creep in, unconsciously, those thinking patterns can be rather negative. For example, I'm never going to be promoted. Or it just feels like nobody respects me at the level that I want to be respected. Those sort of negative thinking can just play over and over and over unconsciously on autopilot in our minds. So the most important foundational step is to start building awareness around our thinking. And one word that I hear so often, even among high-achieving individuals, is the word struggle. Katrina, I don't know if you hear that much in your work, but it just is a word that I hear a lot. And right away, it's important to start reframing that because your success starts with your thinking. And the beautiful American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson said a quote that one of my favorites. He says, "You become what you think about all day long." So really important to cleanse our thinking.
I think that's a very good point. Is you become what you're thinking, and therefore all the more important to project in the future what you want to be, so you replace it with a positive future vision of
exactly
what you want to do.
Yeah.
So what do you say, besides what you've mentioned, what are some of the most common challenges that get in the way of success? You mentioned the negative thinking. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so I would say, and again, this is from my experience of both, speaking with individuals over the years and coaching my clients, is that number one is that, and especially I think this is a big one in the United States, is this kind of myth of self-reliance, right? This feeling that, I can figure it out on my own. But the truth is that mentors, or coaches, right? Mentors at an organization, someone who has already walked the path, who can guide you, with whom you can link arms together in order to just make those quantum leaps to get yourself to that next place. Like Olympic athletes always work with guidance, right? An Olympic athlete isn't figuring things out all by themselves. And then I would say the second one is also a common challenge that I see, again, with well-educated, high-achieving individuals, is an overly developed analytical mind. So that left brain, right? So for example, when I bring up that idea of self-image, it almost seems like it's too much like a movie, right? But that's actually what we're doing. We're tapping into more of that right brain, creating with imagination those images, and we're working here with the subconscious mind. So I would say that, the well-developed analytical brain is wonderful, but it's got to be balanced out with imagination, creativity, those right brain qualities that we all have that are going to move us in the direction of what we want. And the bottom line is that, if we think of the most successful people in the world had a vision, had a dream, it starts with image, right? A picture. And that's right also where self-image ties in.
Yes, and plus self-image is an image. So, right, it has it even in its world. Basically, having a coach gives you an observer, because when you have a sports coach, you're doing the exercise, but you have somebody else at the exterior that sees where the improvement can be made, or gives feedback, or give the sounding board. It's like a partnership. So, what would you say is the number one mindset tool you can share to help people be more impactful?
Yeah. So the number one mindset tool I want to share is I want, your listeners to really be open to that tool around self-image, right? And specifically creating a new self-image. So I just want to take a minute again to redefine what is self-image. So self-image is that mental blueprint that we have of ourselves. It's deep in our subconscious mind. And actually, this is based on the work of Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who was a medical doctor back in the 1960s. And I'm not going to go into this in detail here, but it's based on his research. And one of my mentors, Sandy Gallagher, says, you can never outperform your self-image. So whatever your self-image is, it's like a set point. And particularly because over 90% of your behavior is subconscious. So in order to reach that next promotion, to be more validated and respected as a leader, to grow your business revenues to that next level, you've got to create a new self-image. And the basic, 2 steps, I do want to emphasize this requires attention, dedication, and discipline. It's something that you have to work at absolutely every day. So number 1 is to get very, very clear about what it is that you want to achieve. And I almost like to think of this in a movie analogy. This is right from Dr. Maltz in Psychocybernetics, that movie of your life, so to speak, what it is that you want to achieve, and then seeing yourself in that star role. And then the second part of this, and I referenced earlier my own self-image script, right? Writing a self-image script, which is literally like the script of you, the future you, showing up in your vision. And just like great actors study the part, rehearse the part, research the part, step into the part, we have to do the same. But the way I look at this, Katrina, is that this is the most exciting journey of a lifetime, because it's really when we wake up that potential and that power. I like to think that everyone has exceptional in them, and it's now writing it out as a script and really allowing yourself then to experience this.
So what you're saying is, okay, you write your script and you say it to yourself several times a day. You visualize it, you feel it, you try to project yourself in the future with all your senses to have an experience that your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what you're visualizing and if it's really real. So it's prepping you.
Exactly. You're working in harmony with the way your subconscious mind works. And you're absolutely correct. It can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So it's kind of like hacking your subconscious mind. And you mentioned, the future. Yes, we're creating this picture of the future you, but it's like we zip ourselves into the man or woman today in the present and start stepping into that future you now. So it does happen in your mind. Absolutely. That mental rehearsal starts in your mind. But then the important thing is to actually start living it. Right. So, for example, and I've done this work with clients where, particularly if somebody feels like they're not respected or validated at the level that they want to be, we'll do some role playing about, well, what does that mean? How you have to show up in meetings, right? As the future you, the confident leader, how are you now showing up as the future you in meetings today?
Yes. So it's a projection, an observation, like the coach, that helps the person observe more of what they're doing, like how they're projecting. They'll also, for example, when I help people go to be promoted to the next level, I help them be aware, but then I also help them observe more of how the other comes around and how they're projecting themselves, like you have just said, and how they can be useful to the other person so that it becomes interesting for the other person to have that person be promoted. I don't know if that's really clear, but
yes.
to create alliances in this new role where they're helping a bigger community, and that bigger community or alliances are particularly interested in promoting that person as well, because there's some benefit to them as well. So,
absolutely.
So it's looking within, but it's also observing the others and what they can contribute to the others.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. You're absolutely right. Initially, this work is very sort of self-focused, right? Because it's often such new information for individuals. But you're absolutely correct, because we don't exist all by ourselves in organizations, right? It's about the team. It's about the people. So absolutely. Thank you for that point. Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, we're already coming to the end of the podcast. God, it's gone flying by. But I want to ask you, where can people get a hold of you?
So I'm on most of the major social media, particularly LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. And I'd also like to invite your listeners to download a complimentary checklist. It's a 7-point mindset checklist for high-achieving business leaders. And they can go to my website at stephaniehesslercoach.com.
Of course, your name will be in the show notes, but I'd like to say that Stephanie ends with N-I-E, not Y.
Yes.
And Hessler, Hessler. Thank you very much, Stephanie. It's wonderful to have a friend on my podcast. Take care.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you for all the beautiful work that you're doing out in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you for listening to the Excellent Executive Coaching Podcast. You can subscribe to all future podcasts at excellentexecutivecoaching.com. Join us each Wednesday to learn more about the latest trends in leadership techniques and bring your coaching to the next level. To learn more about Dr. Burris's CEO Mastermind, use the contact form at excellentexecutivecoaching.com.